Chapter 121 To the Magic City, Shanghai. Mo Fan was also helpless. Bo City was definitely not a place he could continue staying in. Who knew whether the Darkwing Wolf would come back, and the military wouldn't dispatch people to stay here forever. The only reason why a remote place like Bo City was able to develop into a city was because of its extremely special natural resources. The natural resources, in front of everyone's eyes, had essentially been completely plundered by the Black Vatican. And the most important resource, the underground Holy Spring, had been drunk by Mo Fan. Due to this matter, Mo Fan had been invited over to have tea several times. Yang Zuohei, Mu Zhouyan, Zhang Kong, and the others did not investigate further into things. Either way, being able to protect the underground Holy Spring and allow Bo City to have this many survivors was all due to him. Mo Fan's achievements did not go unnoticed. Mo Fan, you are now a brave man who can support heaven and earth. I, your father, will listen to you. You decide where we'll go, Mo Jiaxing said to Mo Fan. Let's go to the Magic City, Shanghai. Mo Fan blurted out. The biggest city in the south was naturally the Magic City, Shanghai. When he was in the science world, Mo Fan had wanted to go to that huge city and strive for more. It could be assumed that the Magic City of Shanghai was bound to be an important city in the magical world for numerous magicians from across the country. The housing prices in Shanghai are very high. I'll go and see if Shanghai is giving our Bo City a placement house, Mo Jiaxing said. Xinxia didn't have any objections. Wherever Mo Fan went, she would go, too. Not too long after, Mo Jiaxing ran back with a smile on his face as he said to Mo Fan and Xinxia, the magical city, Shanghai, does indeed have a small safety placement for our Bo City. If there aren't any other problems, then I'll register our names on it. Leaving as soon as they could, the whole family of three quickly began to organize their belongings. In fact, there wasn't much baggage. After all, their house had already been sold. Speaking of which, Mo Jiaxing was quite capable of foreseeing matters. It was as though he had predicted the great calamity of Bo City, and thus, he didn't quite care too much about the house he had lost. The entirety of Bo City had already been taken away by the military. Who knew what Mu he was currently feeling, considering he owned several estates in Bo City. They rode a bus to the closest island of Xiamen, and then took a train from Xiamen all the way to the Magic City, Shanghai. Speaking of which, what happens if magical beasts appear on the train route? Mo Fan was sitting in the train and suddenly had this thought pop into his head. The train route is safe. There's a barrier protecting it, Xinxia explained. Speaking of which, this should be my first time going this far from home, Mo Fan said awkwardly as he rubbed his nose. It feels like Brother Mo Fan came here from a different world. There seem to be many things you don't know of, Xinxia smirked. Yeah, I came from a world of science. The schools there would not teach you this kind of dry, bitter, and boring magic. They teach you extremely interesting science theories. They use science to explain everything. It was nothing like this place. Magic for us was just a superstition, Mo Fan said with a hint of sincerity. Xinxia probably had not seen anyone talk rubbish so earnestly. She was shocked as she heard this. What nonsense are you spouting? You students who don't make progress in school are just daydreaming of this non-magical science. If it wasn't for those great people exploring magic, then your house would not have electricity, computers, or any means of transportation. There would definitely not be a gigantic train like this that requires a lightning magic diagram to operate. Damn brats who don't know how to respect history and their elders, swore an old man with black hair and a thick mustache who was sitting next to Mo Fan. After Mo Fan heard this, he didn't feel very happy. Mo Fan thought he would have adapted to this world after 3 years of living here. However, when the old man said the train used a lightning magic diagram to operate, Mo Fan began to feel like his IQ was not enough to comprehend all this. Old mister, my son likes saying bizarre things. Don't take him seriously. Old mister, are you also going to Shanghai? Mo Jiaxing was good with people. He immediately began to chat with the older man. Yes, I was doing a seminar in Xiamen. I'm currently returning to Shanghai. With regards to your manner of speaking, could it be possible that you're a professor? Mo Jiaxing continued asking. The old mister rubbed his mustache while the corner of his eye displayed a smiling expression, Jewel University history professor. As Mo Jiaxing heard this, his face immediately displayed reverence. Mo Fan also looked at the old man in some surprise. Jiaodong University and Fudan University that existed in the Shanghai back in his world did not exist in this world. However, the Jewel University of Shanghai was huge. It could be said that it was the magic university every magician yearned to go to. If the calamity of Bo City hadn't happened, Mo Fan would have attempted to enroll into Shanghai Jewel University. The people of Bo City that were being put in these placements were all part of a project. The majority of the exam candidates were being assigned to a different high school funded by the government to study an extra year before taking the Magic High final exam in the coming year. For Mo Fan, who had reached the intermediate level, a Magic High School had already lost its use. Now, Mo Fan only wanted to enter a magic university. A second awakening stone could be considered relatively precious. Furthermore, they were usually in the hands of schools, magic associations, the military, or noble families. Even if you wanted to buy one in the black market, you might not be able to do so. Not only could Mo Fan cast intermediate-level magic of lightning and fire after reaching the intermediate stage, he had also obtained yet another opportunity to awaken. The first thing Mo Fan needed to do after reaching Shanghai was choose an organization that could awaken him a second time. The most suitable was entering a magic association. With his current cultivation, it definitely would not be a problem for him to enter a magic association. However, a magic university was also an excellent choice. After all, the Magic Association was an accomplished organization. They had magicians they wanted to nurture, special positions, and an orthodox method of distributing resources. Magic schools had always been determined to nurture others. The resources distributions were also left to those who were more capable. When the time came, he would have to ask whether Jewel University did special enrollments for students. For someone like himself, who was good at picking up girls, or a good lightning magician, who knew if they would give him special treatment or not. Speaking of which, the person next to me is precisely a professor of Jewel University. Let's ask him. Old mister, does Jewel University have special recruiting? Mo Fan asked. Special recruiting? Unless you have an exceptional display in some area, then you won't be in Jewel University's range. Basically, there is no such concept as a special recruiting, the old professor replied. He sized up Mo Fan, who couldn't be any more common, before he asked, "You want to enter Jewel University?" My original plan was to take the exams there. Then you should just pass through the high school exams. Don't think about special recruiting. Jewel University is a gathering of the most outstanding students with the highest potential from across the nation. Being able to distinguish yourself from thousands of exam candidates would make you incredibly unusual, the old professor said. Is there a special recruitment, or not? Mo Fan asked very directly. There is, of course there is. However, I don't think that it is something a normal person is able to pass. Chapter 122 Star Trails. In the end, that god-forsaken old professor didn't tell Mo Fan anything about the requirements of the special recruitment. Mo Fan and his family finally arrived at the placement area address provided by Bo City. There seemed to be around 1,000 or so people in the placement, just enough to fill a small district. A brief description of the district could be said as cozy. The truth was, the construction of it could also be described as sloppy. The height between the floors was relatively short. Living inside those places was like living inside a slightly larger box, restricted to a certain extent. But according to what Mo Jiaxing said, as long as there was a place to live, then there wouldn't be any problems. Mo Fan also didn't have anything to complain about. After considering Xinxi's situation, the neighborhood association placed them on the first floor. Originally, Mo Fan thought he'd be able to see the high-rise buildings that were bright like a flourishing blossom. Unexpectedly, the surroundings of this area were even more desolate than freaking Bo City, the post-calamity Bo City. This was a very rural area of Shanghai. According to the neighbors who had already moved in, it took roughly 20 minutes to get to the subway station via the bus, and then another half an hour to get to downtown Shanghai. That would mean going to Shanghai took an hour, and coming back would also take an hour. Shit, if it wasn't for the fact I don't have money, then I'd have already left. How could I think that the government would assign us to the beautiful city? Instead, they placed us in this place that isn't half as good as Bo City. Money, I need to make money. In any case, I am an intermediate magician. Making money should be quite easy. And after I get that money, I'll finally move. No matter where I rent, it'd still be better than this uninhabited rural place of Shanghai. I suspect that there's probably magical beasts appearing in the evening. Mo Jiaxing didn't mind. He was very quick to find a job, and he soon returned to his old profession, a chauffeur. Xinxia didn't plan on going back to school. There probably weren't any magic schools in this area of Shanghai. The round trip to the city was also very inconvenient. Thus, she decided to homeschool and then participate in the high school exams next year. The fact is, a healing magician was in great demand in hospitals. However, Mo Fan didn't want Xinxia to enter society this early. For someone in her situation, it'd be better for her to stay in a park with an enchanting scenery. Mo Jiaxing's new job started to get busy. Xinxia was self-studying and meditating at home. It was clear that these two had adapted to their new lifestyle. Mo Fan was also busy. He didn't have too much money at hand, but preserving his relatively simple lifestyle was not too much of a problem. However, to change his lifestyle into a better one required hundreds of thousands of RMB, which was a bit more difficult. Not to mention, Mo Fan planned to use those hundreds of thousands of RMB to purchase star trails. Star trails were very important for Mo Fan, as there were a total of 49 stars within his magic nebula. In the past, Mo Fan only needed to link 7 stars to cast primary magic. However, the difficulty of intermediate magic was much higher than primary magic. First, Mo Fan needed to link his stars into a special star path. After linking the star paths, it would become a captivating star diagram, which would be considered as opening the door to intermediate magic, allowing him to cast spells of that level. For a new intermediate magician to connect all of their 49 stars without a mistake was simply a fairy tale. That was because they were unable to remember the pattern of the star diagram, and also because their minds couldn't handle the duration of high concentration. Star trails were a kind of magic scroll, their usage similar to the star diagram books given to Mo Fan by Mrs. Tongyue. The star diagram book was able to directly connect all of the stars to a certain extent. If you were to compare the two, a star diagram would be like a character with numerous strokes, and the star trails would be like the different radicals. It was the copybook for the radicals. Note: Chinese characters are made up of radicals. New intermediate magicians needed to use star trails to guide and regulate them, or else they would create an indescribable star diagram that couldn't conduct magic. One star trail cost 50,000 RMB. Mo Fan bought 2, one was fire and the other was lightning. In other words, the 10 or so thousands of RMB which he had earned back in the Hunter Squad had all been used to purchase this godforsaken magic copybook. To excel among their peers as primary magicians, the big family clans would expend a lot of money on their children. However, reaching the intermediate level, it would simply be robbing them of their wealth. A tool for assisting in control of your stars cost 50,000 RMB. That was roughly the same price as a cheap car. In short, there was no money for them to move anytime soon. However, that was fine. He would focus on cultivating in this desolate place. What method was he going to use to earn money? Undoubtedly, it would be killing magical beasts. As for killing magical beasts, without intermediate magic, it would be relatively difficult. Just thinking about that incredibly vicious fist of flames smashing over, Mo Fan's entire being began to get excited. What magical beasts? They might as well become banknotes and enter my pocket. Furthermore, Mo Fan had yet to cast the intermediate magic of lightning. The star diagrams which Mrs. Tongyue had given to him were all of the fire element. The intermediate level fiery fist was already incredibly tyrannical. I wonder how lightning element, the strongest of the classic elements, would strike the heavens? Cultivate, cultivate. I have to hurry up and cultivate properly. If I don't cultivate it, then I swear I won't leave the door. Mo Fan was incredibly enthusiastic. He didn't want to waste a single day as he began to meditate in their new apartment. Meditation was essential. Mo Fan had roughly calculated that he currently had enough magic energy to cast 3 intermediate magic spells before he would feel dizzy. If it wasn't for Xinxia's healing magic, then he most likely would faint after using Fiery Fist. After meditating, he would cultivate control. His 49 stars would no longer form a monotonous star path, forming a far more complex star diagram. Seeing the disobedient and scattered stars, Mo Fan began to feel a headache. At the same time, he felt like he was incapable of doing this. Little Loach, whether I, your father, can remain awesome depends on you. If you don't help me cultivate, then I will sell you off. The market price for a Stardust magic tool is sky high. let alone a magic tool like you who has jumped who knows how many grades after swallowing the underground holy spring. Ed. Note. Our Mofan. He seems to have forgotten the pendant is bound to him. Empty threat, unless he kills himself, too. After absorbing the underground holy spring, the little loach pendant had jumped who knew how many grades. Currently, Mofan had no idea on how to appraise little loach pendant's grade. Either way, it was impossible for it to be the same as the tiny little stardust magic tool from before. Chapter 123 Ms. Tongyu's Invitation. Currently, even if Mofan didn't enter meditation, his nebula would still be in a state of growth. The growth rate wasn't slow, either. An exact number of how much the little loach pendant was supplying his cultivation was something Mofan did not know at the moment. In short, Mofan hadn't done anything in these 2 months of time. He only focused on cultivating. He didn't know whether he would be able to completely cast his first intermediate magic in a short half a year, like he could back at primary level. Alright, I have cultivated for a month. Let's see where my limit lies. Mofan exerted all his effort, preparing to connect all of his stars to the very extent of his ability. Mofan was very familiar with the methods of connecting stars into star paths through the usage of star trails. What came after is how many stars Mofan would be able to control. The first 7 were easy, as they were the 7 stars for his primary magic. Mofan connected them with ease as they formed into a star path. As the control continued, Mofan forced the other stars that were moving quickly to listen to his command. The 8th star was very obedient. Mofan didn't interact with it much, and after a proper agreement with one another, the 8th star had moved into its allocated place during the first week. The 9th star was not as obedient. Mofan had used threats to finally subdue it, and when he wasn't being cautious, a fracture could easily emerge on the 9th star. A fracture was the same as primary level. When a single star failed to connect, then the entire star path would collapse like a domino effect, forcing a restart. This was caused by outside interruptions, or a lack of concentration in controlling the star. Good. The next one is the 10th star. After successfully connecting the 9th star, he immediately began on the increasingly difficult 10th star. The previous 9 stars were all on the same star path. They were the axis of the star diagram. Mofan had to constantly maintain the completed star path so it would not break, all the while he attempted to open up another new star path. Completing a single star path may not be hard. However, controlling other stars while maintaining an entire star path increased the difficulty several times over. This could be considered as testing the level of a magician's concentration. Mofan was shouting within his mind, while at the same time, he did not dare to loosen up. He clearly remembered that when he had broken through to the intermediate level, his consciousness had been hit by a sequence of headaches. He clenched his teeth as he endured it. The truth is, if you were unable to endure this kind of mental attack, then it could be said that your mental strength was not enough to handle a whole nebula's worth of stars. Within this period of practicing, who knows how many times Mofan lost to the 10th star. Good job. The purple star gradually came over sincerely. At last, it finally remained in the specially designated spot obediently, under the control of Mofan. 1 star path and a newly appointed star. For Mofan, this could be considered as taking a big step. At the very least, he had grasped the essential part of the intermediate magic's star diagram. Many intermediate magicians could meticulously study this star diagram for many years. Many had already achieved the intermediate level. However, by the time they were able to use intermediate magic, they would already be too old. The difficulty of a star diagram was far more difficult than a star path. They would be stuck at this area if they did not have a sufficient amount of willpower, nor understanding of control. Mofan's control could be considered very successful. On this morning, Mofan went to find a desolate place without any people, just like before, so he could practice his magic. After reaching the intermediate level, Mofan's speed in casting magic had become extremely fast. Now, Mofan only needed 1.5 seconds to cast lightning strike or fire burst. It was said that the real incredible magicians were able to cast primary magic simply by lifting their hands, achieving the action of an instant casting. Mofan also knew that practicing was extremely essential if he wanted to reach that kind of level. 1.5 second casting was still slightly slow. If a magical beast was around 30 or so meters away from you, perhaps they would only need 1 second to directly appear in front of you. After finishing practicing, Mo Fan felt the mobile phone in his pants vibrate. As Mo Fan opened the phone, he saw it was an unknown caller. He felt suspicious as he answered the call. "Hello, is this Mo Fan?" From the phone came a mature and incredibly sexy voice. Hearing it could make people's ears feel comfortable. "Mrs. Tang Yue, it is great that I can hear your voice again." Mo Fan answered happily. After the calamity happened, no one was able to care for others. Mo Fan also did not see his beloved Mrs. Tang Yue. Speaking of which, if it wasn't for Mrs. Tang Yue giving him the few star diagram books, then his life would have most likely ended in Bo City. "You sure hid yourself in a far place. I had to ask Kong to know that you're in the placement area in Shanghai," Tang Yue said with a smile. "After so many things happening, I just wanted to find a peaceful place to practice," Mo Fan replied. "How come you decided to come to the Great Magic City? The waters here are quite deep. Even the Mu family would be classified as a small family clan within the Great Magic City of Shanghai. Seeing how much you love causing trouble, I hope you don't provoke any of the great noble families," Tang Yue said. "Currently, it is as though I am cut off from the rest of the world. The placement area is pretty desolate. Even if I wanted to cause trouble, I'd still need the environment," Mo Fan replied with a bitter smile. "This placement area. Sigh, forget it. I feel too disinclined to talk about it. I am currently on a mission in a northern area of Hangzhou. If you don't have anything to do, why don't you come over here for a bit? I'll take that time and give you some recommendations," Tang Yue told him. "On a mission? Mrs. Tang Yue, just what divinity are you? Could you leak a bit of that to this student of yours?" Mo Fan replied. Mo Fan had already asked once before. Star diagram books were indeed an item that you couldn't buy even if you had the money. His teacher, Mrs. Tang Yue, had given him 4 books at once. It clearly showed that her background was not as simple as just a high school teacher. "I'll tell you when the time comes. So, are you coming here or not?" Tang Yue said mysteriously. "I'll go, of course I'll go. You should have reached the intermediate level, right?" How did you know?" Mo Fan replied awkwardly. The matter of reaching intermediate level was something Mo Fan hadn't told anyone yet. After all, the more strength he exposed, the more unfavorable it would be for him. "It just happens that we are in need of a lightning magician." "Sensei, I haven't completed my star diagram yet. Don't worry, I have already prepared a lightning star diagram book for you." "Does your family sell those? Why do you make it sound like it was a cabbage? I heard this thing was being controlled by some influential power, and it was impossible for them to be on the market." "Sister Tang Yue, don't tell me you are from that influential power?" Mo Fan asked. "Why are you asking so many questions? If you help us complete this mission, then you will receive many benefits." "Will there be an awakening stone?" "An awakening stone. All right, if you finish this, then I can bring you to the Magic Association to awaken." Mo Fan felt a headache coming on as he heard this. "What do you mean, finish this? Pretty lady, you are a teacher. Could you please pay attention to the phrasing?" Chapter 124 Tang Yu's background. Hangzhou was very close to Shanghai, or perhaps it could be said that Shanghai's urban area bordered the urban area of Hangzhou. Mo Fan arrived in a small town in Jiangnan, a location in the north part of Hangzhou, following the instructions of the mature and sexy Mrs. Tang Yue. The name of the small town was Qishui. The name of it was somewhat interesting. However, after Mo Fan arrived in the small town, he realized that this place had cracked, soiled, and abandoned fields everywhere. Compared to the image of the Jiangnan waterways that Mo Fan had in mind, the difference was like heaven and earth. What water? Let's not even talk about a river. There was not even a brook to be seen around here. Even a small pond would be a huge problem to find. The small town seemed to be a decent tourist attraction in the past, and it appeared to have some relatively classic inns. Following the address sent by the beautiful Tang Yue, Mo Fan found the Spaced Inn. With a glance, he noticed the curvaceous, charming, and wonderful teacher who was sitting on the balcony, and Mo Fan felt much happier. Her round butt, and the impressive, majestic mountain peaks. "Mrs. Tang Yue, are you sure your last name is not Kang?" Tang Yue seemed as though she could sense Mo Fan. As her hair swept past, her eyes, like limpid autumn waters, were filled with joy as they gazed at the young man who had arrived. Mrs. Tang Yue is still that beautiful person from the past. Mo Fan couldn't help but praise her. "You're not bad, either. Reaching the intermediate level at such a young age, even amongst the large noble family and associations, that could be perceived as a genius, Mrs. Tangyue replied with a smile. Mrs. Tangyue isn't that old either, right? I have yet to truly see your strength, Mo Fan answered. All right, stop playing dumb. I know you wanted to ask where I was during the calamity of Bo City, right? Tangyue was very direct. All right, I do want to know because I feel like Mrs. Tangyue isn't as simple as your regular intermediate magician. Your background can't be normal, either. The only thing is, I don't understand why you came to teach in our Tianlan Magic High. Is it because you did something that you can't tell people, or is it perhaps that you are actually the mastermind behind the Black Vatican? Mo Fan wondered aloud. Tangyue rolled her eyes as she heard this. This student's imagination is quite rich. Do you know of the Enforcement Union of the Magic Association? Tangyue asked him. I've heard a little about it. It is said they are a group of enforcement magicians of the highest level, who specialize in catching magicians who have broken the law. Mo Fan replied. Yes, and I am one of them. The truth is, we were somewhat aware of the plan the Black Vatican had for Bo City. Unfortunately, we were unable to foresee that they had laid down such a large-scale plot. With my strength, I could at most subdue that guy called Selang from the Black Vatican. The rest could only be left for Zhongkong and his company. It's my fault. If I had been able to foresee their objectives earlier, then the calamity wouldn't have happened. Tangyue didn't want to hide the truth from Mo Fan, so she explained things very directly. You weren't at Bo City for even 2 years, whereas those people had been plotting it for more than 10 years, assigning their personnel, and drawing up their plan. It was obvious that the higher-ups didn't put too much importance on the matters of Bo City, or else, how could they send you as the only spy to Bo City? Mo Fan responded. The disaster of Bo City was clearly something the Black Vatican had plotted for a long time. Considering the Enforcement Union was somewhat aware of this, and furthermore, that they had even assigned Tangyue to remain in Bo City, that itself proved that they weren't a group of total fools. As of now, the news of Bo City's destruction has been spread everywhere. Furthermore, the news of the Black Vatican has also been made public. I have also reported what I know, and the Enforcement Union's upper echelons have taken over this matter. I believe the Enforcement Union will be able to deliver justice for Bo City very soon, Tangyue told him. Forget it, let's not discuss sad subjects. Let's talk about why you have asked me to come. Did something happen in this small town? Why does it look so dried up? Mo Fan changed the subject. Your observation is quite sharp. It is indeed as you said. The water resources of this Chishui town have dried up. It's nearly like the drought in the northwest, Mrs. Tangyue said solemnly. Is something happening here? Mo Fan subconsciously asked. After being in the city hunter squad for so long, Mo Fan had a habit of linking these types of things to being the work of magical beasts. If people thought there were no magical beasts in a large city, then they were too naive. The bigger the city was, the more magical beasts there were, and more people eaten. I'm not too clear. It is reported that this strange thing has occurred in many cities and towns. The clues I have found so far are very limited, and that is why I need you to assist me here, Mrs. Tangyue told him. Then you have found the right person. Before I became a magician, I was determined to pursue a detective career. I have watched over 600 episodes of Detective Conan, and am thus proficient in various. Oh, my point is, let me know what you need help with. Mo Fan wanted to talk non-stop, but stopped in his tracks. My background is very sensitive. It is very difficult for people to find out. If we aren't wrong, then the person wanted by our enforcement union should have an answer on him. Tangyue pointed toward a man dressed impressively outside of the window. What's wrong with him? Mo Fan asked. We don't know for now. However, going from experience, these matters tend to have demons involved. This demon is the usual magician with a distorted personality. There are no lack of scheming magicians. Even if they didn't join the Black Vatican, they have still done many things that are against the rules of heaven. Killing people is a normal occurrence for them. Don't judge him based on the way he is dressed, just like a little master from Hangzhou, the people they kill. More accurately speaking, the people they have killed are no less than that of magical beasts, Tangyue said sincerely. Tangyue hoped Mo Fan would understand that he wasn't here to disturb them, but to face off against those evil magicians. Those magicians never considered the lives of other people, and when the casting started, they were the first to take action. Mrs. Tangyue, you summoned me to help deal with this kind of savage and frightening magician. I'm afraid I might not be able to deal with them. I originally wanted to call for a lightning intermediate magician, however, he is very far away. If I wait for him, then the wanted person would escape during that time. Tang Yue understood this kind of thing was a bit far-fetched for students like Mo Fan. However, Tang Yue didn't want to let this kind of criminal do as he pleased. Mrs. Tang Yue, your matters are my matters. Don't be so polite. I will go and follow that guy. I guarantee that I'll even grab his household register. You sly little boy, I see you won't do anything unless I give you some benefits? Tang Yue glared at Mo Fan. That lovably angry appearance was indeed particularly graceful.